Have you ever struggled with starting a new project? You are excited about the idea of taking the first steps, doing the research, and getting the equipment, while at the same time feeling terrified. That project calls for you to use new skills that you have not developed yet. And as you try to learn, one challenge follows another, almost knocking off the desire to continue the process off of you. That is exactly how I felt in the past few weeks. Heck, it is still how I feel as I work on this episode. Today, in the official pilot episode of Hello Trauma Brain, I want to introduce myself and get candid about the difficulties of starting a new project, coping with imposter syndrome, and how I predict this podcast can help me and others heal. Hi, I am Raysa, a survivor of narcissistic abuse, and I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And you are listening to Hello Trauma Brain, a podcast where I share my experiences living with complex PTSD. My hope is this podcast can help destigmatize mental health and provide support for anyone diagnosed with CPTSD who thinks they might have it or has a loved one with this diagnosis. Quick reminder, I am not a licensed psychologist or mental health care professional, and this podcast is not meant to replace nor substitute the care of psychologists, other mental health, or medical health care professionals. If you think you might have complex PTSD or PTSD, please reach out to your primary care or mental health provider. This episode may reference trauma or abuse, and listener discretion is advised. Remember, you can always pause or skip this episode at any time. And now, let's get back to the episode. Hello, dear survivors, and welcome to this pilot episode of Hello Trauma Brain. Thank you for joining me today. I want to start off by introducing myself. It is really hard to talk about myself, but I will give it a try for the sake of using this podcast as a healing exercise. Usually I would start with what I do for a living, but as I try to connect with my authentic self, I choose to outline my qualities first. I am highly empathetic, especially towards other people, and sometimes to my own detriment. It is something that I am working on as I learn to have more empathy for myself. I have a sweetness to my personality, and I tend to be agreeable. I am reliable, and I will follow through when I make a commitment. I am highly attuned to my surroundings and others. I am also very self-aware and conscientious of how my behavior can impact other people. Lastly, I would say I am extremely resilient. If you are going through a crisis, I can be your go-to person. In a weird way, I tend to fall apart with the simple tasks, but heavy stuff, I have a tendency to handle a lot better. Now, I will list what I do. I am a singer-songwriter, musician, mental health advocate, support group facilitator, paralegal, and now, a podcaster. Can't believe I'm saying that out loud. Okay. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and Spanish is my first language. So, yes, you will hear an accent throughout this podcast. As I said in my intro, I am a survivor of narcissistic abuse, which led to the development of my complex PTSD. I decided to do this podcast because I kept hearing other people in the field of psychology point out that there is a lot of content focused on abusers, but not a lot of content focused on the survivors. I volunteer with survivors of narcissistic abuse, and I have noticed that sharing my experiences with them and what I have learned in my own healing journey has been helpful to them. As I heal and find my own voice, I realize that making the information and lessons I have picked up along the way more accessible would be a great way to help raise awareness and hopefully pass along tools and hope to those healing from abuse and complex trauma. Today I would like to talk about the challenges of starting a new project as a trauma survivor. How does the trauma response show up for me? When I was recording the draft for the trailer of this podcast, I remember hearing a voice in my head saying, "Who do you think you are? Trying to enunciate and sound professional? You don't have what it takes, and you are not fooling anyone." It felt like I was being injected with something. Those thoughts came with a physical sensation that started in my head, going down my body, making my vision a little hazy. I did keep recording the trailer, and when I played it back, I could hear in my voice the moment those thoughts threw me off. I am very used to continuing despite having intrusive thoughts, but let me tell you, it is really hard. And all I wanted to do when I was done recording was redo the whole thing, as I wanted a take without struggling in that way. One of the many trauma responses I live with is perfectionism. I want everything to be perfect, or it is not good enough to be seen and shared. Now, the take on the trailer happens to not be that take. I ended up doing a few changes and took advantage of the opportunity to re-record. And yes, perfectionism will get its own episode. How is this relevant to trauma survivors? I believe that trauma survivors often internalize the voice of the abusive people in their lives. In my experience, even if that person is not in the same room with me, sometimes I can still hear their voice inside my head. It is like my brain is still doing their dirty work, and it feels awful. I think this is a manifestation of a pattern of imposter syndrome, which I often struggle with. Before I share the definition of imposter syndrome, please note that in this podcast, I will make reference to experts and resources. However, they are not sponsoring Hello Trauma Brain. Today, I will reference Dr. Ramani Dorbasula, and you will hear her name quite often in this podcast, as she is, in my opinion, the top expert in narcissism and a fierce and honest voice against narcissistic abuse. According to Dr. Ramani, imposter syndrome is an endemic problem, and it includes feelings of not being qualified, doubting your abilities, fear of being found out and exposed. P.S. So far, I have felt all of those things as I have been doing this podcast. Even if you are doing something well, internally you believe you are a fraud. Self-doubt is a central theme of imposter syndrome, and it can lead to limiting ourselves, cutting our goals short, or not even trying at all. I will link a video to Dr. Ramani's YouTube channel where she talks about imposter syndrome in the show notes for those of you that would like to learn more. I am still trying to figure out where this pattern was created. So far, I would say it is probably a result of being mocked and having my abilities questioned by other people. Eventually, I guess I internalized those messages and developed a lot of self-doubt. Another major factor for me is that I have been devalued based on my social class, gender, and race in the past. I have also been discouraged from fully pursuing certain goals or career paths, especially those that are not considered financially sustainable by society. I also constantly heard the message that only people who are inherently good at something, right from the start, without having the learning curve period, are the ones worthy of doing whatever the thing is. Anyone who needs time to get the hang of it is a fraud. Starting this podcast is stirring a lot for me right now. Even my body is feeling it, and my stomach has been a bit of a mess as I get ready to launch this pilot episode. I'm actually battling an infection right now. Before I decided to do the podcast, I did a test episode and got positive feedback. However, a part of me found it hard to believe the feedback was true and genuine. If I am honest, a part of me still does believe that I have no business doing a podcast. I have already released a trailer at this point, and even though I am getting lovely feedback, even from strangers, a part of me is waiting for that very first nasty message to roll in, calling me an imposter. I even sent a podcast announcement to some individuals in the psychology field, just letting them know I wasn't really expecting a response. But turns out they all replied, with such kindness and encouragement. And I had to read the replies a few times and still struggle to believe they replied at all. It is like something won't let me take it in. Are they really saying that about the trailer? Really? It is good? Wait, am I misreading this? You can show me actual evidence that this podcast can be a good decision and people will listen, and my brain won't know what to do with that information. It is still waiting for the other shoe to drop. And it is really hard to keep going while hearing a voice inside my head screaming, I don't belong here. Hello, trauma brain. There it is. Now, what am I doing to heal? This podcast, actually. I am going against a lot of conditioning, self doubt, and feelings that I am an imposter by continuing the process of starting this podcast anyway. Now, as part of this first episode, I want to share my hypothesis in terms of how this podcast can help my healing. Let me first define a hypothesis, which, according to Merriam-Webster, is an assumption, an idea that is proposed for the sake of argument, so that it can be tested to see if it might be true. I predict this podcast will help me by serving as a tool to document or journal my progress and growth, and it will hold me accountable. Gotta practice what I preach, right? It will help me carve out time to reflect on the topics I choose for this podcast. Also, I anticipate that it will increase my self-awareness and perhaps even lead to some realizations I would not reach otherwise. Sharing is a powerful step when healing, and this podcast will allow me to share my healing with you. And I really hope this podcast can help you in some way. The podcast will also be an exercise in creativity, which apparently is a crucial aspect of healing. I think doing this podcast will help rewire some of the conditioned messages that I have internalized that say, don't try new things, stick to what you know, and only do things that you are extraordinary at from the get-go, Raysa. This is going to be a huge learning curve. It already has been. And making mistakes and tolerating the feelings that come from them will hopefully help me show my brain that it is okay to start a new project. I hope some of those feelings will lessen as I prove to myself that I can try new things, take risks, and keep myself safe in the process. Because the truth is, not starting this podcast will guarantee one thing, which is I will never know if I can do this. There's only one way to find out if I can keep up with this podcast. And it is trying. It won't be perfect every time. Life will get in the way. And that is okay. It often shatters me to think of all the things we will miss out because a survivor was told they could not fill in the blank. How many songs, movies, books, podcasts, dance routines, athletes, and beyond are out there that we will never get to experience and know. I don't want this podcast to fall inside the abyss of the things the world will never hear. If you are listening to this, then the podcast is officially out, and I won't ever have to wonder, what if? We deserve to start a new project. We deserve to learn from our mistakes. And we have a right to belong. In this week's healing invitation, I want to offer you a few things to reflect about. Can you become aware of the internalized voices that come up when you think about starting a new project? Have you not pursued a hobby, group, activity, something, because you don't think you belong or are capable of doing that particular thing? Take a moment to see if you can pinpoint whose voice is that. Is it your voice? Or is it something someone else said to you that is still echoing inside your head? I invite you to research whatever comes up and learn a little more about it. You might learn that it is not something you are interested in, or you might feel a calling or desire to learn even more. No need to make a huge commitment. This is about allowing yourself the possibility to consider trying it. Please let me know how this week's healing invitation goes if you choose to accept it. Before we wrap up this episode, all music and production is courtesy of yours truly. Also, I want to share a few ways you can support this podcast. You can subscribe and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or the platform you are using to listen. Share this episode with anyone you think can benefit from this content. Follow Hello Trauma Brain on Instagram. Subscribe to the Hello Trauma Brain YouTube channel and hit the notification bell to be the first to know when I post a new episode. And you can make a donation by getting me a coffee through the official bio site. No worries, all links will be provided in the show notes. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. I wish you the best as you research any potential projects and as you get started if you choose to. It is time for our farewell affirmations. You are welcome to repeat after me. I am enough. I am lovable. And I deserve to heal. I wish you a gentle week, and thank you for listening.